I'm Cynthia James, and this network is about changing lives one woman at a time. Hello, and welcome to Women Awakening. I am your host, Cynthia James, and I say this every week, but I'm very excited that I get to be with you and I get to introduce you to women that are making a difference on this planet, that have stepped into their power and into their gifts and are here not only to do that, but to share it with others so that they can do the same, that they can step into their gifts. I think what is happening on the planet in this moment is a powerful time for women. I feel like we're emerging, where we are definitely asking for our voices, for our seats at the table, and for our ability to bring our gifts. And so I'm so grateful that you're here. I do these every week with a different woman, and you can subscribe: iTunes, iHeart, Spreaker, Amazon, YouTube. Come back every week and meet these women. What's incredible is that they will inspire you to take steps, to take action, to make your life better. So thank you for being here. And I'm very happy that I get to introduce you to my guest today. Her name is Jane Enright. And her bio says she is an ordinary person who has survived some extraordinary things. She is an inspiring and humorous thought leader. She's an author and a speaker, Canadian-based. She's a former kindergarten teacher, a strategic planner, and a university lecturer, as well as the founder of My Super Awesome Life Incorporated. I love that title, right? She speaks to audiences seeking answers to overcome their fears of the unknown, or grief, or stress, depression, anxiety. And she talks to people from top executives to stay-at-home moms, because she wants people to land butter side up. And we are going to talk about that, because that's her book, Butter Side Up: How I Survived My Most Terrible Year and Created My Super Awesome Life. Jane, thank you so much for being here.
Well, Cynthia, thank you so much for having me. I think first of all, what you're doing is fabulous. I do believe that women always need platforms to bring their voices to the table. And yours is so inspiring, because you're not only a podcaster, you're an author as well, and a fellow She Writes Press author as well. So very, very proud and happy to be here. And if I can make anyone's journey a little bit easier, that's what I want to do.
Well, I'm so excited to dive into what you're doing. And I love that we have the same publisher, and I'm a big fan of them. But I want to just ask you, tell us how you grew up. A lot of times people think that successful people just kind of dropped into that space, and not so true. How did you grow up?
You know what? That's a great question. So my parents got married very young. I was on the way. So, again, they didn't have an easy time of it. It wasn't that storybook, situation where two people, we meet, we fall in love, and, they just sort of came together because, oh my gosh, there's a baby on the way. And my mom worked shift. She's an RN, retired RN. She worked shifts at a hospital. She worked a lot of nights. And so she was away a lot when I was younger, and she would come home from her afternoon shift, and I was like a little chatty Cathy, and I always wanted to chat to my mom, right? Because she had missed dinner and putting me to bed and stuff. And she'd always say, Jane, I want to spend time with you, but I need to sleep. So she'd say goodnight, and she'd put some books in my crib. And she said I was actually teaching myself to read when I was 18 months because she needed to sleep. Okay. So my mom was one of those moms that, although she couldn't be there all the time, she always made me feel special. And I was very task driven. The other major thing that happened to me is my parents ultimately divorced because they just weren't getting along, as couples should. And that can be a very traumatic time, especially, I'm in my 50s. So when that happened in terms of the 70s and the early, 80s, there wasn't exactly a lot of kids out there like me that were going through that situation. And, it taught me very quickly that out of something bad, something good can come from
Yeah.
it, because although it was sad to have my parents split up, the things that pull at your heartstrings, those heartstring moments, the things that pull at your heartstrings, it was challenging to be brought up the rest of the time by just my mom. But the other thing, my mom was happier and she was healthier. As not only an individual, but as a mom, she could give us, more time and attention, even though her time and attention was at a premium because she worked full time. That time we spent was very joyful. So it taught me a lot about the quality of life. It taught me a lot about making choices. And no, I didn't have the easiest childhood growing up. I didn't have a lot of money in the house. There were lots of times where we couldn't afford to do things and whatnot. I didn't grow up being an author or saying I was going to be an author. I got nudged in that direction when my path changed. So yeah, I went through those heartfelt moments, but basically made me stronger as a woman. And my mother, as an independent woman, taught me that yes, you can have whatever you want, but you got to work for it.
Yeah. Yeah. My mom was a single mom too. And um, for her, it was you can create, but you need to be educated and you have to work for what you want. So
Yeah.
I wanna just kind of start diving into your story because like a terrible year
Yes.
created something extraordinary. So I want to talk about what was the terrible year, and then I
Okay.
want to talk about how you got to the other side.
Oh, I got to the other side. Okay, yeah, because I truly believe, the past is just a chapter, not the whole book. That's
Right.
something that I espouse. So I had my most terrible year. It started in April 2017. Spoiler alert, if anybody's read or reading Butter Side Up. I got hit in the head, I got slammed in the head with a volleyball at a sporting event. I
Oh,
was sitting in the stands. My younger son was playing rep volleyball, and it wasn't an accident. I found out it took 4 years to find out the truth about what really happened. And there was a young man, they were practicing, warming up for the game, and he was angry about something, and he decided he was gonna spike the ball in the direction of the stands, not to hit me per se, but because, he was angry. And, a lot of people didn't want to admit that that's what happened, but it did finally come out that that happened. And that takes forgiveness. I forgave that young man for that incident, but it changed my life forever because I developed what's called speech aphasia. I had a lot of memory issues. I used to talk for a living. I was a very successful strategic planner. I traveled all over the world, facilitating focus groups for big companies, like big names that you would know, And you know what? I couldn't speak. I had word finding issues, and I was like Dory in Finding Nemo. I couldn't remember names, and I quickly understood that top executives were not going to pay me a lot of money to put on a name tag
all right.
because if I asked them to repeat themselves, they would say, "Well, gosh, she must not be listening." Right? So I can tell anyone with a traumatic brain injury, don't judge a book by its cover. It doesn't mean that that person still isn't an intelligent being with something to say. It just may be that the path from their brain to their mouth or the path from their brain to their ear got interrupted. So my life got interrupted in a very, very big way. And just had to work with a speech pathologist just as I was getting back on track. You would think that would be enough. I was saying, well, what am I going to do with myself now? What am I going to do next? And my fiance at the time, I had a very lovely partner fiance at the time. He had his own traumatic brain injury, and he had a car accident. And unbeknownst to us, had a bleed in his brain and fell from a standing position the next day onto a cement floor in the garage. And he woke up when he said, everyone's so nice here. I can't remember who anyone is, but you're the nicest and the prettiest. He woke up with
Okay,
that.
wait, I just have to take that in
Yes.
because you must have been grateful he was okay, but your heart must have like shattered in that moment that he didn't remember you.
Yes. So imagine being in a hospital room. Imagine that 10 days have gone by where he's toing and froing and things we don't know if he's going to live or die or whatever. Finally awakens and yes, looks at me and says, I don't know who anyone else is here. I don't know who anyone is here, but you're the nicest and the prettiest. So he couldn't remember who he was, and he couldn't remember who I was. Didn't remember meeting me, didn't remember proposing to me, didn't remember his children, didn't remember his address, didn't know what a hospital was, didn't remember that he used to be the CEO of everything, had a very successful company. Didn't know how old he was, didn't know how old I was. Just imagine, you've already had this personal injury of your own, and then your partner, so I pretty much lost my career, had to reinvent myself, and now my partner, I'm erased from his life.
Right.
Well, I always say to people, what would you do? Because that's a heart-wrenching moment. Those are two heart-wrenching moments, you know.
Right.
And
Well, you were
so,
also, when you had your incident, you were raising your child alone, correct?
oh, yes, yes. So I have two sons that are now 26 and 22. So yes, they were still at home. One was at university, one was in high school. So yeah, I mean, I still had to pay the bills and put food on the table and pay the university fees and, you know, help him with his education and put my son through school. So yes, so yeah, I was, you know, I'm an ordinary person, just like everybody else, with bills to pay and a mortgage to pay and all that kind of stuff. And then the partner that I thought I was gonna marry, and I mean, this is a catastrophic brain injury. And, you know, it wasn't like he just suddenly woke up a few days later and said, oh, I remember you now. I basically had to tell him the story of our life. I had to tell him how we met and keep reminding him. I also had to advocate for him because they wanted to put him in long-term care. So I'm sure there's women out there that are going to listen to this someday and say, that sounds maybe like my parent. That sounds maybe like somebody I know. So I was not only advocating for myself, Cynthia, I became an advocate for him because they wanted to ship him off because he couldn't remember anything anymore. They said, he's not a candidate for rehab, he's not gonna retain anything. And I said, no. I said, no, that's not what's supposed to happen. And so basically, Butter Side Up is not just my story of how I navigated not only my life, but helped him, but how he came back from almost losing his life and you know, his recovery. And then also my best friend of 4 years, her journey at the very end of this, that was the third thing that was very sudden and tragic. And she basically disappeared from my life in 3 weeks. So I had my own near-death experience. I watched someone else be near death, and then I watched my friend die. All in the span of 365 days.
Yeah. But I want to talk about your resilience, because in those moments, yes, you're losing everything. You're having to figure out reinvention. You're trying to save your beloved's life and bring him back to his wholeness. And the friend that you love is leaving. What were you calling on in yourself to stay present to deal with that?
Yes, great segue. I call it my OMG. When bad things happen, we all a lot of us say, oh my goodness, oh my God, because it's a cry for help. It's our brain's way of saying what comes next, because fear of the unknown is really what holds us back, right? In terms of moving forward, especially when there's a crisis. It's very easy to get stuck. It's very easy to stagnate because that emotionality can take over very, very quickly. So if you've ever read anything by Michael Singer, The Untethered Soul, which is a fabulous book, outside in thinking. First of all, acceptance. Accepting very quickly that things that happen, it means you don't have to be happy about it, but acceptance gives us flexibility of mind. It helps our brain start to think about, get out of that overthinking mode and not get caught in the weeds and say, okay, how am I going to move forward? So basically accepted very quickly that these things were happening. I didn't know how or why they were happening, but I thought this is happening for a reason. I have skills. I very quickly knew I had skills to help not only myself and others navigate this journey called life. And I called on my own OMG, which was, first of all, accepting that things had happened, but outside in thinking, mindfulness, and gratitude. Yeah. So the outside thinking, I sort of distanced myself. And it's not shying away or burying your feelings. That's not, because those were some pretty sad times when it was difficult to get out of bed each day. But basically, it was not looking at the world with rose-colored glasses, but saying to myself, you know what, this has happened. And how am I going to put my skills and be purposeful and mindful each day and move forward and take one day at a time? So I can not only help myself continue my recovery, but help my friend and help my fiance get out of this. So I basically did a scan of my life. It was like putting myself in the audience of the play rather than being in the play. And that's what I talk about in Butter Side Up. So I'm telling you my story, I'm telling you in a humorous way, because when Clayton woke up, he said, I live there with you. I was showing him pictures of the house. He said, I live there with you. You live there with me. I must be a lucky son of a bitch. So handling it with that sense of humor and saying, well, you know what? You're right. You are lucky. You've got this fabulous fiance. Here I am. I can't save you every day, but I'm going to help you get out of this, and I'm going to help myself get out of this too. So writing down, started my dear friends and family's emails, started to write down my experiences, took a scan of the situation in my life and said, okay, what are the strengths? What are the weaknesses? What are the challenges? What are the threats? Like I used to do as a strategic
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
very, very mindfully, very, very practically. It wasn't that I wasn't sad, but stepping away and allowing myself to take some of the emotionality allowed me not to get caught in the weeds of overthinking.
Wow.
The next thing was that mindfulness that you talk about. And the mindfulness basically helps you navigate the path. Mindfulness, taking that one day at a time. A lot of people, I have a very good friend, her name is Brooke Collins. She's gone through her journey. Her journey was that she became sober she's been sober for 10 years. That AA approach to life, that one day at a time, is basically what saved me, because I said, I don't know what the next 5 minutes is going to bring, but I can control what I think about, and I can control how I spend my time. And that gave me back that power. As women, sometimes when we're taking care of others, we're in a sandwich generation where we've got elderly people, especially with COVID, we've got loved ones that may be ill, we maybe have experienced that ourselves during the pandemic, and we've got children to take care of. That mindfulness of that, I'm going to take care of me today. I'm going to do something each day that's just for me, like meditate and do yoga and read some inspirational quotes in the morning that start prepave my day, so that I can use that positive mindset, not to bury my feelings, but to help me be more resilient. Because positivity, a more positive, optimistic attitude is really emergency preparedness for your mind.
Yeah.
Putting away the groceries in the pantry, or the water for the hurricane, or the whatever tornado. We all have storms that come into our life. Sometimes they come into our life that they disrupt our life, but sometimes they come to clear our path. Yeah. So basically clearing my path of any old ways of thinking, of saying, okay, you know what, I'm not going to worry about why this is happening. I'm just going to say, I'm here to help. I'm a helper. I have skills. And I very quickly understood by writing my dear friends and family emails that people were enjoying my writing, because I was writing with gratitude. Thank you. Thank you for getting me out of bed today. Thank you for my life. Thank you for the sun. Thank you that Clayton is not on a breathing tube. Thank you that he's walking. Thank you that he's talking. Thank you that we're able to spend time together. Thank you there was the doctor that suggested the rehab program. Thank you for the friends that brought over the meals. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Gratitude illuminates the path. So that's my OMG. And I'm not saying anything pretty much that's much different than Deepak Chopra would tell you, or Oprah, or Cynthia James would tell you. But you know what? I'm saying it to you differently. So it's very quick. It's like a Louise Hay moment. Boom. Change your thoughts. Just like we are what we eat, we are what we think.
Absolutely. So let me just say, first of all, I want to know what happened with you and Clayton. Because I know everybody in the audience going, and so I want to know that, and then I have another question. But so what happened?
So this man, Okay, so first he was in the hospital for 76 days, then he did have to go into assisted living, so I had to find him alternative care, because remember, I'm still the mom with the dog at home. I got the 100-pound Labrador Retriever, I've got the 2 kids that are at home, I'm trying to work, I'm trying to run his company and mine at the same time. I can't go into assisted living, that's not, that wasn't my role. I had to make a heart-wrenching decision and step away and say, I'm the supporting actress now, Clayton. I'm not the lead one. Because if I'm the lead actress in your life, I'm not going to be able to recover the way I should. And I'm not going to be able to take care of my family and my children like I should. So I won't tell you exactly what happened in the book, but those were some pretty, again, heartfelt moments where it was just, I don't understand, Jane. Why can't we get married? Why can't we get married? Why can't you be my wife? Why can't we do this? And you know what? It was one of the toughest calls I ever had to make. But I can tell you, before we started this podcast, I said, my friend came over to cut the grass. And I told him not to cut the grass now because I'm on a podcast. Well, that friend's Clayton. So Clayton's in my backyard right now, pulling weeds and helping tend the garden, because he and I came together in a different way. We accepted things for what they are rather than what they were. So he's still very much a very, very important part of my life, but we don't have the traditional relationship that most people have. We're not always in the same residence, but we're still very, very much together.
Well, I love that. And I love the fact that your commitment to that relationship went beyond the appearances of circumstance,
Yeah.
and you stepped in to be a loving container, the lead,
Yeah.
for as long as that was needed.
Yeah.
And that you could do soul searching within yourself to go, what is right for us now? What is right as we move forward? And so I want to, did you know how to write a book?
No, I have no formal training, none whatsoever. And this is the thing, I really want to encourage women out there, because I meet a lot of people when I do book signings, and I'm sure you do too. You're a very successful woman, and I applaud you for being a mentor and a leader in the writing community and as a podcaster. Don't ever ignore those hints. I had so many unusual hints, extraordinary hints from people to tell me to write everything from a lady in Italy and an extraordinary Lost in Translation, where through Google Translate at a hotel, she had thought I was an established author and said, when you were a famous author, would you please come back and share your book? I had a blind date on eHarmony with a publisher who published textbooks. I didn't tell him I wrote, but I just written a short story that I put on Vocal Media. I was embarrassed to show him because I thought, oh my gosh, I don't know if he's gonna like my work. I came back to the table after a coffee date and he was laughing out loud, and he said, oh my gosh, he said, you're funny. He said, you've got to tell your story. I never saw him again,
Right.
but that was where, that was in the to and froing of Clayton and I. He wasn't in my life as a romantic partner anymore, and we're trying to get, what am I doing with my life? I had people that I wrote my dear friends and family emails, said, Jane, this is hard, sad stuff, but you're funny. Like you tell it in such a manageable way. When are you going to write next? And I said, what are you, nuts? I said, there's nothing to write about. And you know what? It was finally a vacation. I went traveling with my sons because I didn't actually get to spend a lot of time with them in their later teenage years, because I was taking care of myself and taking care of Clayton and taking care of my friend. I went off to Australia on I called it my big shavasana moment, my yoga moment. I checked out with them for 3 months. They went to Australia to live and work. And I said, I don't know how I'm ever going to travel by myself. And they said, well, Mom, why don't you just come drop us off? So that's what I did. I dropped them off. It gave me that clarity in my mind, Cynthia, where I had the headspace that I could very, very easily just focus on myself rather than everybody else for a change and say, what do I want? what do I want the next decade of my life to look like? What do I want to become? What skills do I have? What strengths do I have? So I use that outside in thinking, that mindfulness, that gratitude. Thank you for my life. Thank you, God, for getting me through this. How am I going to help not only myself and others? Because I knew I wanted to help myself, have a super awesome life and be a creator. But I also said to myself, I know I can help others. So that's, and having faith that everything would happen. And look at me now, I just won an award from Living Now Book Awards. I got
Yeah.
so proud of for a world-changing book on health and wellness. I won an Eric Hoffer Award. I actually have shelf space in a bookstore. If I can do it, anybody can.
Well, I
Anybody.
love that because that's the message. That's why I do this podcast, is because I want women to know that these are not, extraordinary people and that are just different. They're examples of what we can all do and how we can do it. How do people find you?
Oh, okay. Well, you can go to JaneEnrightAuthor.com, Jane, Enright, ENRIGHT, author.com. You can go to my superawesomelife.com. If you just Google Jane Enright Author, I come up. Thanks to the universe. And I always say, you know what? I worked very hard. I published my first edition of Butterside up in 2020, the worst possible time to release a book in Canada. All the bookstores were closed, all the libraries were closed. But you know what? I got great reviews and I got great press, and I had great people that said, you know what? You're a super awesome writer. You're very uplifting, you're very inspirational. I want to hear more from you. And it was people along the way that I'm very grateful for. So people like you that are giving me the opportunity to put myself out there and make my journey a little bit easier. We're cooperating. That's what happens when things are supposed to happen.
Right.
So I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Instagram, She Writes Press, we've got a fabulous publisher. You know what? And is it easy all the time? No, it's not easy all the time. Being more optimistic and positive takes work. But you know what? If you tell yourself you can do it, you can do it. Because again, it helps propel you forward rather than backward.
Absolutely. Well, ladies, I hope you're paying attention. I hope you go find her online, get her book, and read what it looks like to land a Butterside up. So I want to ask the same last question I ask all of my guests. This show is called Women Awakening. And what do you think is the most important thing about awakening for women at this moment on the planet?
That's a really good question. Life throws us curveballs. The road is never straight. I think you framed it very well in the beginning when you said, I think oftentimes people think that successful people, they look at people, everybody has a story. And sometimes that my awakening was dealing with a lot of hard, traumatic things and understanding that I could get through it and help others get through it too. I think, first of all, understanding that sometimes that awakening brings with it some sadness and some challenges that we never expected. But once you understand that sometimes those challenges can bring good things from bad things, and accept that we not only find happiness, but we create it, I believe that that's the most important thing for women to understand right now, that we can be the CEO of everything in our own life. We don't just have to be the receiver in our life, we can be the quarterback. Taking that course, losing a job can mean, you know what? I'm not grateful that I lost that job. I'm grateful that I had that experience. And how can I make that experience work for me? Maybe it's an opportunity for you to try something totally different in your life, like me, being an author. I would have never become an author if all of this hadn't have happened. I probably would have just sailed along in my life and been, la-di-da. Or if I decided that I didn't want a super life, I could have curled up in a little ball in the corner and said, I'm a victim. And why did this happen to me? So you know what? Cherish every moment, cherish every day. Even if it's a tough day, cherish that day and say to yourself, I'm alive. I don't know why this is happening, but you know what? There's resources like your podcast, the library. There's strong women. There's role models out there that can coach us and help us. And there's books like yours and mine and others that She Writes Press and that can all say, you know what? If I can do it, you can do it too. You're not alone. You're not alone.
Well, Jane, you're so inspiring. Thank you so much for being here, for putting your message out into the world and being such a beneficial presence. I'm grateful to know you.
I am grateful to know you, and I'm grateful. I'd like to have you on a podcast someday. I have a little podcast platform, just a little wee one, not like yours. I'm just starting out. But you know what? It's like the little ant moving the rubber tree plant. You know what? One day at a time. Set those goals, aim high, but set those goals every day that say, you know what? I can do something for myself each and every day to make my life better. You can.
Absolutely. And I'd love to be on your podcast.
Wonderful. I'd love to have you. And thanks so much. I'm very grateful to you. Namaste.
So ladies, let me just say this. I say the same thing to you every week. I want to make sure you get it because I say it in different ways. This is your moment. This moment is your moment. You are alive. You are on this planet because you have gifts to give. You are here to shine your light. You're here to bring your majestic, magical, mystical self to every situation, large and small. So make no mistake, you're here by a divine appointment. I'm grateful to do this work with you. I'm grateful to share these women with you. And I will see you next time. Many blessings.